Hello, I'm Andy Schmuckler. Going to talk about something in our very immediate crisis right now as our political struggle moves towards a presidential election in which the survival of American democracy is at stake. This is not my main focus in my life's work, which is about the destructive force that inevitably arose with civilization, which I think I prove in that book back there from the University of California Press. And what we're dealing with in America right now can be understood as this moment of history in this country, how that destructive force that inevitably arose with civilization has worked its way into a position where it threatens to inflict a whole lot of brokenness on the United States of America, and by making this into a fascistic country, a whole lot of additional brokenness upon the human civilization as a whole. As flawed as we've been in the United States as a democracy, a leader of the free world, has played a mostly constructive role compared to other great powers. Not much of a standard, admittedly, but compared to other great powers, we've helped move the world in a direction contrary to where this force of brokenness that I show inevitably arose is trying to drive us. And here in America right now, our local version of this 10 millennia old difficulty we've plunged into as a species, we've got an election that's shaping up in ways that making a lot of people I talk to despairing. It has appeared as recently as yesterday. I was on here talking about, is the Biden crisis resolved? I don't know if that was the title, something like that. And by that I meant it appeared to me, it has appeared to me for several days, and it's reflected on the futures markets too, that everybody seemed to be concluding, okay, there was a confrontation between those people trying to persuade Joe Biden to get off the head of the ticket because they saw him as considerably less likely to win than possible alternatives. I think that characterizes, and that's where I've been coming from. For about 24 hours, I didn't know where to go. But eventually, as I looked at it, all the information and processed it as best I could, it became clearer and clearer to me that the probability of Joe Biden winning was low in ways that forfeited a lot of possibility that we might get if we were to put some good alternative forward instead. The idea underlying my thinking this is that the American people, the majority of them, don't want what Trump is selling. I've been putting the proportion that actually wants it or will choose it because it can't see it for what it is. And I don't know what those proportions are. And it's one of the mysteries of things, is how can you not see what it is? Don't want what Trump is selling, and therefore, if they see their choice as being between something that is acceptable, normal, maybe even attractive, but a continuation of American democracy, or something that when the truth is shown to them, they realize represents the overthrow of American democracy and its replacement by a different kind of power structure that is pretty much the kind that Americans have always condemned and represented ourselves as We represent the forces of liberty and freedom and democracy, the land of the free, the home of the brave. If we can get people to see that contest in those terms. But Biden's disabilities are sufficiently etched into a lot of people's minds, as I see it anyway. And he's not able to dazzle us ever to sort of like be Michael Jordan on the basketball court. And so whatever he may have missed layups or whatever previously, anybody who can do that is okay. You know, he's not capable of that. And I just don't think, between what he's got and what people already think, I don't think he's able to help people see their choice in anything like that way, because they're seeing this guy it has been diminished by age in ways which make him not really the guy we want sitting in the Oval Office, commander in chief, making, the buck stops here and all that. That's not normal either for Americans to choose. They may not choose geniuses all the time. And Ronald Reagan doesn't seem to have been, all that profoundly intelligent. The guy I talked with who worked with Reagan said, well, this guy was very intelligent. He wasn't that intelligent, but he had the instincts, and he was able to make some good choices. This is about foreign policy mostly. This guy was a former ambassador. Ronald Reagan was no genius, but we Americans always believe, you can see it in the old movies, that the experts and the geniuses are not as reliable to listen to as some good, solid, sensible American with basic common sense and his head screwed on straight, like Ronald Reagan. But I don't think that Americans feel that way about somebody they think hasn't got it. Particularly when you're talking about the power position of the American president. Civilized peoples have always looked to their leader as, their protector. He's the guy that stands between us and a world where other people have missiles pointed at us with atomic nuclei, and terrorists that might attack us. Strength, we don't necessarily understand fully as a people exactly what strength would look like in a modern civilized society. It's not like, the ability of Matt Damon to clear the room of all these other people, because he has mastered the art of violence to an extent that makes him almost unbeatable. We have a lot of heroes that are, unbeatable that way. It's a very visceral, almost primate thing. And Joe Biden lacking even the normal amount of radiating that kind of competence and power. And I think it would get in the way of making that choice. People will say, well, I don't like what Trump represents, but at least he's strong. And I don't feel comfortable voting for a guy that I see as having been rendered disabled and unfit by the aging process. He's already the oldest president the United States has ever had in office. So if you get rid of Biden, you disemburden yourself of a whole raft of things. I'm not talking about, the use that the Republicans can make about the way the exodus from Afghanistan took place, or make up stuff about immigration or something like that. those are the normal things. There's plenty of ammunition on the part of the Democrats. Just the videos of things that Trump himself have said, and people who worked with Trump who can say things, people who are his own choice who can say things about him in ads that can be aired. That choice can be made vivid, and then there are the alternatives. Not Joe Biden, but a normal, competent American president, whether it's Kamala Harris or Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania or whoever the Democrats would put at the top of the ticket. There's no reason not to feel sure that that person would be able to shed the Biden problems and project a positive vision, prosecute the case against Donald Trump, and appear to the American people, except for the Trump cult, as an acceptable alternative to Trump. That's all the American people need, is an acceptable alternative to Donald Trump. And they will choose that because most Americans want American democracy, the rule of law, all those institutions, America as we've known it to survive. Now, I've been following the futures markets, and I've been heartened since yesterday by the way the probability assigned to Biden being the top of the ticket out of the convention decreased markedly. I couldn't see any reason for the first 20 points of drop. I wrote to a bunch of people asking, what does this mean that it's dropped like from 70% down to like 50% likely, according to the futures market, which is supposedly expressing the wisdom of the crowd. The futures market is people betting and setting a price, which is uses what the market's really good at to find an equilibrium point where equal numbers of people are willing to buy and sell. And that assigns a probability of the scenario unfolding. And what had been almost like a 3 out of 4, it's going to be Biden on the top of the ticket. And it looked to me like it was just going to keep on rising, as the days kicked by, because it looked like the effort to persuade Biden to step down had been tried. All these different things that had happened, both New York Times and The Economist and George Clooney, and this remark from Nancy Pelosi and a couple dozen congressmen, all this stuff being said to them, to Biden, and him just digging himself down deeper and deeper. So he was so dug in that people thought, okay, we've seen the confrontation, we know the outcome. And it looks like it's going to be Biden, because only Biden could change it. And if he says, I'm the best person to defeat Trump, nobody can force him. So it looked like it was a done deal just yesterday. But with so much at stake, I felt like, well, we got to do something. You can't resign yourself to a catastrophe that hasn't happened yet. So I sent that video to the person I know who's actually in a position of somewhat national leadership and has a national platform and likes to hear from this little guy, and that can sometimes influence what that big guy does. So that's what I did with yesterday's video, saying, well, let's not resign ourselves yet. But then I saw that there'd been this 20-point drop, and why is that happening? There hadn't been anything like that. So I wrote out to people, nobody had a clue. And then I saw this notification that, well, let's just say at this point, well, the game is back on. I didn't think it was going to I thought it was over. But Biden's down now in the 30%, like where he was when the battle was fully pitched. So many people in the Democratic world are feeling this sense of doom. There is a despondency and a despair in many quarters about the possibility that Donald Trump would win, combined with a perception that if Joe Biden would just get out of the way and allow himself to be replaced. He had thought of himself as a transitional president when he was first elected. Well, now it's obvious that that's really what he should be, a transitional president between to the next generation of Democrats. And all those people would be okay. And quite possibly a lot better than okay. And they'd all have a better chance of winning, which is the essential thing when the survival of American democracy is at stake. Which is why I don't like the way Kamala Harris is rising to the top of people's thinking, and you can see it on the futures market, as if it had to be an automatic choice. Now, I'm not saying she shouldn't be the nominee. I actually have my doubts about whether she would be the best nominee, and I can articulate the reasons for them. I was a fan of hers before the 2019 campaign really got moving, and I actually wrote a long letter to get to her having to do with the important role I saw her being in a position to play. I got nothing against her, because she's black or she's an Asian American or she's a woman. All that is fine with me. And I also admire that she has shown that she has prosecutorial abilities. And we've seen it when she was a senator, and that might make her the best alternative, because prosecuting the case against Donald Trump is really an important part of the job. I just don't think that she connects with people in the kind of way that makes people happy to vote for her enough to get as many votes as somebody else could. But the issue isn't whether I think Kamala would be the best nominee or not. I would have an open mind if people would just do what I've been saying for 2 weeks. It should be the process, which is to have all the a handful of possibilities try out by delivering a 15 or 20-minute speech to be watched by the delegates before the convention. And I think you could get it nationally televised, where they each deliver the speech, which they show, this is what I could do if I were the Democratic nominee to get the American people to vote for me and to reject Donald Trump. I think the delegates can be led to a place where they can exercise their collective judgment about this person or that person is the best nominee. I would be confident that that decision would be arrived at in a fair way. But what I see on the futures markets suggests to me that the crowd whose wisdom the market is tapping into imagines that automatically it's going to be Kamala Harris. And I'll tell you, in terms of statistics, how that becomes visible. Who's going to be the Democratic nominee is the question. And Biden falls and Kamala Harris rises simultaneously. And when it's in the other direction, it's the same thing. In other words, everybody who's starting to conclude that no, it's going to be Joe Biden decides, oh, well, therefore it's not going to be Kamala Harris. But more to the point, everybody, when they think that Joe Biden maybe is going to be removed from the top of the ticket, they automatically think, okay, well, that means it's going to be Kamala Harris. You can see these other possibilities like Newsom and Whitmer and such down near the bottom getting in single digits, and it doesn't budge. Gavin Newsom had 7% when people thought that Biden was going to be replaced, and he had 7% when people thought, oh, it's going to be Joe Biden. And I think that's just not the right way to go about it. Let the delegates decide means let's make a collective decision. The fact that she's the vice president, that applies to some situations about replacing the president, but we're not in that situation. Our task isn't, follow some rigid rule like the vice president replaces the president if he gets assassinated or something, or just removes himself, 25th Amendment, all that. This isn't that situation. And our job is to maximize the chance that we will defeat Donald Trump. That means we got to make the best possible decision. If it's Kamala Harris, go with Kamala Harris. But don't just assume it's Kamala Harris. We need to make a judgment on that. And let's develop a process, which is what I was just describing about these national talks where people try out for 15 or 20 minutes. Let's have a process which enables the democratic world, well, not the whole world like we would if we had, all the primaries from the Iowa caucuses to New Hampshire and all that stuff, all the way through. No, we can't do that, but we've got a group of delegates, between 3,000 and 4,000 delegates that have been elected by the Democratic base in primaries around the country. Pretty much all the people who were voted for were essentially, I think Joe Biden, I don't know what percentage he's got. He's got the overwhelming, almost unanimous. These are people who ran as Biden delegates. So they'd probably be biased in the direction of Bidenhood, which might benefit Kamala Harris. But, the president could say, your assignment is pick who will be the best person for, and then describing what the Democratic ticket needs to accomplish. Getting a mandate to do good things, but maybe especially to save American democracy, however that should be put. The president should charge the delegates with that job because he knows that this is a battle where the stakes are way beyond big, which really puts his insistence on staying on the top of the ticket in the manner that he has. Not in a very favorable light, I hate to say. But it's still time for him to play the right role in helping the Democrats to do what the American Republic requires Democrats to do when the other political party has become the Trump party, that we see in all of its outrageous, manifold brokenness, the lies, the violence, the lack of respect for law, and willingness to manipulate and exploit people. I mean, the list just goes on. Ignore the needs of our children and grandchildren around climate change. Inflame the tensions between different groups of people in America, especially racial groups. I mean, the list just goes on and on. most Americans are still not captured by something that is so much an embodiment of destructiveness, brokenness, and evil as that. So winning this thing is the task. If we win it, there are all kinds of other tasks that we face, but none of it can be done without first defeating Donald Trump and the Trump party. So let's not make some kind of automatic decision based on the Constitution, what it says about vice presidents succeeding, or let Joe Biden single-handedly say she's my choice. No, we're trying to save American democracy for the American people. We need to give the people, as much as possible, a chance to see what form our rescuer might take in this showdown between democracy and fascism, which, if you go to my website, A Better Human Story, you can see that there are intellectually responsible ways of talking about good and evil. And what this Trump party represents and does in the world meets my definition of evil, which is a coherent force that consistently works to make the human world more broken, or to make the human world worse. That's what we're fighting. And when we approach the question, if we get the opportunity to choose someone to succeed Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, we should exercise the very best judgment we can come up with collectively. And the delegates are right there in place. They can watch these tryouts, not debating each other, but each showing what they've got, like figure skaters or gymnasts, not bruising each other in the ring, but each showing their own form of excellence. And then let these delegates at the convention decide. And it doesn't have to be a mess. We got a handful of candidates, people vote, and they vote either on the first ballot, which would be the last ballot also. I'm talking about, what's it called? Ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting. As soon as you've done that, you have chosen a winner. It just has to be cranked out. I'm assuming that a computer program can be done so that the vote of the delegates would be cranked out quickly, minutes, hours at the most. Because inevitably, when you eliminate the people at the bottom of the deck and spread their ranked choice voting to the other candidates that remain, eventually, inevitably, when you get down to two, one of them's going to end up with a majority, with 50% plus. So you got a decision. You can have that on the very first ballot. That might be the best idea. Or you could have it on the second ballot, which would be the final ballot, in order to make room for example, the candidates who have dropped out by that point, like who would Josh Shapiro endorse, if anybody, if given the choice? It might be useful to get the opinions of the also rans about who they would vote for and why, to influence the delegates in making the final choice, which is the ranked choice voting. I can see going either way. And maybe Kamala Harris would get that. That's not the issue. The issue is let the delegates decide. They represent us well enough. And if they are properly charged to understand that the job is to win. Who's got the best chance of prevailing in this presidential election? That's really the only important question, because the stakes of getting on the wrong side of that are just catastrophic if we were to lose them. So this is our immediate battle, the battle between forces of brokenness, which we're up against. Fascism definitely makes things broken and grows out of things that are broken. And forces of wholeness. The forces of wholeness have not been as impressive. History will not record this as our finest hour. From the last 30 years, the liberal world has not risen to the occasion as this force has been growing in power. It would have been easier to defeat when Bill Clinton was president, and when George W. Bush was president, and when Obama was president. It's continually grown in power and force. All right, well, right now we're in this situation where Joe Biden might step down. And if he does, if he doesn't, let's make the best of that. It's not impossible that Joe Biden could win. It just looks like a way too uphill a fight, and more uphill than it needs to be. What do we need to do among our options that makes the possibility of fascism's victory as small as it can be? If they are properly charged, these people will decide right. And if they choose any of these people, especially the ones that they have decided are the best able, the American people, a substantial majority of them, will choose that normal, decent, acceptable, constructive president above this ugly, destructive, norm-destroying, law-breaking, vile, dishonest person who is the alternative, the only other person who might win this election. Thank you. If you think there are other people who would like to hear this, please send a link to it, to this video, to those friends. And I also invite you to like, follow, subscribe, and to take a look at my efforts as a writer, where I was trained to make things really, really clear and systematic and lay out a better human story that makes considerable sense of why our history has been as difficult as a species the last 10,000 years as it has, and what are the nature of the challenges that we face. Right now in America, our challenge is make sure that fascism doesn't take over. A betterhumanstory.org.